Hello, thank you for watching my channel today. My name's Sarah and my channel is called Your True Shelf. Today I'm filming a little bit of a late wrap up for the month of May. I've got a couple of books that I read at the end of April because I think I did a wrap up a little bit earlier in April. So I've got those to talk about as well. So there's quite a few books, so I'm not going to delay by waffling on at the beginning. So I've only got 3 physical books here, either because the rest have been like library books, ebooks or audiobooks. So I'll do the physical ones first. The first one is a classic, which I buddy read with Jo Smith, and this is Tess of the Derby Earls by Thomas Hardy. And Jo and I had a great time buddy reading this because there was loads to talk about, and this book was the book that had been on my TBR the longest. So I've got this beautiful cloth bound classics edition, but it just sat on my shelf and I absolutely loved this book. I thought it was fantastic. I actually listened to it on Audible because it's free on Audible Plus, so I listened to it. And it's about Tess D'Urberville, who is quite from a poor working class family with lots of younger brothers and sisters, a dad who is just a bit of a fool, a mum who's working really hard, and the dad finds out that he is related to the ancient D'Urberville family who have died out and were very wealthy, and so he basically wants Tess to go and meet with a man called Alec D'Urberville who lives way away, who they think is an old ancestor, to try and get some favour with them. And it turns out he's actually a con man. He's not, he's just pretending to be a D'Urberville. And it's basically how his life interacts with Tess's, changes the course of her life, and also how her true love is kind of thwarted and detoured because of the actions of this Alec D'Urberville. So it's a very sad book. So some bits are funny. It's got a good plot. It's well written, but also has a really good moving plot at the same time. And you get to know the characters really well. They're really fleshed out. It's not hard to read. Like, I thought it would be like a real struggle to read, but it really isn't at all. And yeah, it's just I cared so much about Tess, and I thought this was a fantastic book. And Jo and I also had some really good discussions because Hardy's clearly like quite a modern man in his thoughts on lots of things that were sort of scandalous at the time. He's quite sort of modern, and we really quite were interested in him as a person. So I might read a bit more about Thomas Hardy, but I'll definitely be reading some more of his books. The second one was off my 5-star predictions list, and this was Ill Feelings by Alice Hattrick. This book is, it wasn't 5 stars for me. I think I gave it 4 stars in the end. This is a book about Alice, well, it's her memoir about her health. And Alice's mum was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME, when Alice was a child, and her mum also had some other medically unexplained symptoms. And then Alice started developing, her mum started after she had pneumonia, and then when Alice was a youngster, sort of in her, I think she was around like 12ish, she started developing similar symptoms to her mum. And it talks, basically it's not written in a linear fashion, it's written kind of a bit all over the place in terms of like the time course, and interspersed with Alice and her mum's story is the story of other women from history who've had probably chronic fatigue syndrome, so like Virginia Woolf, Florence Nightingale, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, like different people, and she talks a lot about those people interspersed with her own stories. And one of the people she talks about is called Alice, which I found, Alice James, which I found quite confusing because I wasn't sure which Alice she was talking about some of the time. I was hoping, because it sort of says on the back it's kind of like their case histories interspersed with women from history, but it's not linear enough for me to be called a case history. It talks a lot about disability and medically unexplained symptoms. It's quite they're very dissatisfied with the medical professionals, so there's not anything positive, I don't think, about medical professionals in there. It talks, like, Alice is quite open to the idea, like she was talking about the kind of the shame and embarrassment you can feel from having this illness, because a lot of people like don't believe in the illness, and she would kind of examine the idea of, could it be something that she's making up? And I don't like making up, because even if you have an illness which is like a functional illness, it's not a made up illness. So I don't like that term at all. But it was interesting. It could be quite negative at times, but it wasn't as good as I hoped it would be. I think that's how I could sum it up. But I think you could probably sit and talk about the book. If I'd read it more recently, I could have talked about it for probably a whole video. But I don't make notes as I go, which probably should. So I can't remember all the salient points. And then the last book I read in physical copy was a 5-star, and it was Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. So this is Heartstopper book number 1. I absolutely loved Heartstopper, the Netflix adaptation. I think I've said that on my last kind of 2 or 3 videos, and I had heard loads of really positive stuff about the graphic novels, but I didn't own them, I hadn't ever read them. And as soon as I started watching the Netflix show, I was like, I really have to get my own copy. So I've only got the first one so far. I really want to buy all of them. And these are the story of Nick and Charlie, who meet in school and fall in love, basically. It's just like Charlie is openly gay, and Nick is thought to be straight by everybody, and basically Nick and Charlie get feelings for each other. They become really good friends, and then they become more than friends, and it's kind of Nick sort of exploring his own sexual identity. It's about like addressing homophobia and stuff in young people, as well as giving young people, I'm sure, a lot of confidence and comfort. It's just the most beautiful story. I loved it so much. The artwork, I'm sure everyone's seen already, but the artwork is all in black and white. It's really easy to read, and it's just gorgeous, and I can't wait to read the next ones. Audiobooks, so let's have a look. So the first one, Creatures of Passage by Morowa Yejide. This was one which I listened to because it was on the Women's Prize long list and it didn't make the short list. So this is about our main character, Nephthys, who is a taxi driver. She is driving a taxi which has a ghost in the trunk, and she basically always arrives for people when they need her. So she never gets like taxi bookings. She just knows who needs her, and then she'll turn up. And she lost her twin brother Osiris, who was murdered quite a few years ago, and she has become like alcohol dependent since her brother died. She's had a lot of pain to deal with, and she has a great nephew called Dash, who's 10, and Dash sees something. He sees a caretaker of the school like sexually abusing one of the school pupils. And he doesn't know what he's seen. He doesn't really know like what to do with the information, and he's really scared of the caretaker. And then he starts hanging out at the river and seeing this guy called the Riverman. And this caretaker is kind of he's been abusing different people in the town for years, and it's like showing how all of those people's lives have like slowly gone to ruin thanks to him. And yeah, it's like there's a lot of magical realism, there's a lot of folklore and interplay of like spirit worlds and earthly worlds, and I thought this was really good. Like actually Morowa Yejide actually reads the Audible, which was really nice, because obviously then you know how the author wants it to come across. The next Audible I listened to, I loved. This was The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. I read and reviewed The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer as one of my first ever YouTube videos, and so if you want to see that one, you can go way back in the archives to my like second ever, I think, YouTube video. But This is a non-fiction, and this book is basically about, it's Michael Singer's story. So Michael Singer is a meditation and spiritual teacher. He's American, and he's like worked with Oprah and stuff, which is how I got to know him, through Super Soul sessions. And basically he, in the early, was it the 60s or the 70s, he basically got into meditation and Buddhism, and he decided that he was working as like a college teacher, and he decided to basically buy some land, like a lot, that was like someone was selling up these sort of big plots of land, and he just wanted to build like a really simple house there and live there in the woods, meditate, work a bit to get money, and his whole life he wanted to just spend like doing meditation. And then, so that's about his meditation journey. But then also he has this surrender experiment, which is just like incredible. So he basically decides that the universe is like infinitely wise, and all of the things that happen in the world, which go on happening all the time, that the universe just takes care of without us having to do anything. And so he was like, if the universe is infinitely wise, like whatever opportunities or experiences come my way, I'm just going to surrender to them and feel that like I don't know best about this. And so like some things happen which would make us be like, no way, oh this is so bad, this is terrible, I can't believe this happened, make us fall to pieces. And he just kind of uses his meditation and his surrender experiment to just think, okay, so this has come here for me to teach me something, I'm just going to go with it. I'm just going to go with it. Even if I inherently think this is bad, I'm just going to go with it and see what happens. And he's not saying like, put yourself in danger or anything like that. And he's not saying don't listen to your intuition, you know, like I'm a very big believer in listening to our own like intuition. But he's saying, for instance, like, gosh, I don't know, if somebody offers him an opportunity and he's thinking like, oh, do I really want to do this? Then he's just saying, yes, I'm going to take this opportunity because I don't know what this is going to lead on to. I don't know like what the bigger picture is here. And it's amazing like what happens in his life after he does this surrender experiment. Like all the things he ends up being, like this isn't a spoiler because I think it's on the back of the book, but he ends up being like the CEO of like a multi-billion-dollar company, which he doesn't even have any interest in being rich or anything like that. And it's really like incredible the stuff that happens in his life, and I think about it so often. Initially for the first part, so there are definitely mixed reviews on Goodreads, so if it's not your cup of tea, then if what I've said doesn't appeal to you, or you're kind of thinking, oh no, I don't really like the sound of this, then don't read it if it doesn't call to you. But there is like at the beginning I was thinking there's no privilege acknowledgement here. Like he is a guy who doesn't have to worry about his safety in the woods. He doesn't have to worry, his parents had given him some money, so he didn't have to worry about how's he gonna build this house or buy the land, or you know, how's he gonna survive, or he just has the freedom to kind of go off and do some traveling and different stuff. So there was no acknowledgement in the beginning of I'm really lucky because if I hadn't been given this by my parents I couldn't have, all of those kind of things. But I don't feel like, for me, that didn't spoil the book, because even when he had great wealth in terms of the company, he wasn't using that wealth himself. He was always using it for good. He wasn't ever keeping the money and stuff. So he was living like a very simple life, and yes, it got him started, but I don't feel that he kind of then abused his privilege in any way. So I thought this was fantastic, and like I say, it's really stayed with me. I really keep thinking when I get an opportunity for something, or when something happens, I really think about that book and about his message. And so that's definitely one I'm going to re-listen to, and he reads that himself, so I'd really, really recommend that if you think it sounds like your cup of tea. And then otherwise, the only other Audible that I read this month was one that I absolutely adored. Another 5-star book. It was Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason, and this is read by Amelia Fox, who is a British actor, and she did an amazing job of reading this book, absolutely amazing. So I'm sure that everyone's heard all about Sorrow and Bliss because it's another one who is listed for the shortlist of the Women's Prize, but in a very short synopsis, it's about Martha, our protagonist, who is from a middle-class London family. She's had mental health difficulties, and ever since she was in her mid-teens. She's married, she's a writer, her life's a bit of a mess, and she's finally diagnosed with this condition, which in the book I believe is just a line, but in the audiobook they call it X because it's an unnamed mental health condition. It's not given a name on purpose to make it more generalisable and to take away people's preconceptions of that particular illness by calling it X. And it's one of the most, it's absolutely hilarious. Like, no book, I can't think of any book that's made me laugh out loud as many times as this book did, because the sister is so, and Martha together, Martha has a sister called Ingrid, and they are so funny together. Like, if you like Fleabag, I think you will like this, because the humour between the sisters is the same in my book as the humour between the girls in Fleabag as well. And it's very kind of dry humour, but it's so funny. And there's a lot of kind of really wealthy people in the book. Like, their aunt is called Winsome, and she's really wealthy, and she lives in like Belgravia, and there's like really funny bits in it where like Maggie Thatcher moves into Belgravia, and every time when she's with her family walking somewhere, instead of going the easy way out of Belgravia, she makes them march all the way past Maggie Thatcher's house just so she can say, oh, that's where Maggie Thatcher lives. And like, there's just really funny little bits in it as well. And like, Winsome like starts planning for Christmas in April, which always makes me laugh. And I don't know, I just found it so funny, but also covering very serious issues, really understanding what it might be like for Martha to live with this mental health condition, really getting inside her head, like, so understanding her so much. And also, even though she would be so difficult to have in your life, loving her to pieces. Like, I loved Martha. I thought, you know, even when she was being terrible or really difficult, I just loved her. I thought she was amazing. Like, the whole book, I absolutely, definitely one of my favourite books of the year. I would be absolutely made up if it won. I thought it was fantastic. So that is all of the audiobooks. Library books, Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. I'm not going to talk about this because I did a whole reading vlog, which I will link down below in the description box. So if you want to hear my thoughts about Great Circle, you can watch the vlog. The Sentence by Louise Erdrich, another Women's Prize shortlist book. So this is about Tuki, who is a Native American woman. She went to prison for like a really ridiculous crime she didn't even realise that she'd committed. She comes out, she starts working in this bookshop. Most of the characters in this book are Native American, and there's a character who is their most kind of, they call them their most annoying customer, and she's white, and she really wants to be Native American, and she's kind of trying as much as she can to appropriate their culture and be like them. She dies, and then she starts haunting the bookstore, and it's just about like it's very contemporary, so it covers like Black Lives Matter, it covers COVID, it covers Black Lives Matter protests during COVID, and it covers lots of different topical issues. It also mixes in a lot about Native American culture and folklore and traditions. And I thought this was a fantastic book. Like, I really loved it. The cover is so boring in the UK that I really didn't want to read it that much, because I know it's so stupid, but I was quite put off by its cover. But I thought it was really good. Then from the library, I had Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. So this was another fantastic book. We have two young men. One is white, one is black. They are married, and they are murdered. And their dads are both, haven't accepted them for being gay, and so they've both been estranged from their dads. and they haven't made up by the time they're murdered. They're murdered really at the beginning of the book. They've already been murdered. And the dads decide, one of the dads approaches the other, and they decide that they need to get revenge on whoever. They need to find out, the police are like not really doing anything. They need to find out who killed their boys, and they need to get their revenge. And they've both got really shady past. Like the white dad lives in a trailer park. He doesn't really have any money. He's an alcoholic. He's got like lung disease. He keeps coughing all the time. And the black dad, I'm really sorry, I can't remember either of their names. The black dad has been in prison and been in like a really like violent group. But then he's totally changed his life around, and he has a landscaping business, and he's like completely left all that behind him. And he's kind of like, oh, I don't know about getting back into it again, because his life is like really good. And he has enough money and everything. And so they decide anyway that they're going to kind of pair up and try and avenge the deaths of their sons. And it's a really powerful book about like father-son relationships, and about like the white dad is getting to know more about like his presumptions and his prejudices and his white privilege. Yeah, I thought it was like such a fantastic book, and it deals with like grief. I really loved it. I thought it was brilliant. It was very raw. In places it was very violent. It deals with some very unsavoury members of society, but a fantastic book. So 2 books left, both of which were from my work book club. Firstly, there's The Art of Hearing Heartbeats by Jan Philip Sendker, which is a book in translation. And this is a book about a boy called Tin Win who is blind, and a girl called Mimi who can't walk. So I think she has talipes, which is where your feet are, instead of being like this, they turn in like this. And so she can't walk, so she crawls basically. And Tin Win has been abandoned by his dad's died, his mum's abandoned him at a really young age, and he's taken him by a neighbour, and he starts to go blind, and he's sent to a monastery for his education. He starts learning to read Braille, and he meets Mimi, and Mimi basically, they fall in love. He carries Mimi everywhere, and she is his eyes. So basically she directs him because he can't see, and he carries her because she can't walk, and they work as this amazing partnership. They love each other very much. And then Tin Win is called away by a rich family member who is set in Burma. And the rich family member kind of throws a spanner in the works and changes the course of their lives forever. And it's split timelines, so that's one timeline from the 1940s, and then modern day we have a young woman who is Julia, who has gone to Burma to try and find out what happened to her dad, who disappeared when she was really young. So, and it's how the two stories interlink. It was a brilliant plot. There's actually 3 books in the series. I'm not sure if I'm going to read the next one or not. It was a really good plot, but I didn't really like the writing style. It was kind of like a fable, how it was told. The dialogue was really unrealistic to me, and you had to kind of suspend belief about a lot of things. So it was sort of fable-like for me, but I gave it 3 stars, but I did really enjoy the plot. And finally, well done if you've made it this far, the last bit was The Manningtree, which is by A.K. Blakemore, who I actually had the pleasure of meeting at the North Norwich Literary Festival. She was lovely. This is a book set in Manningtree, which is a village in Essex, very close to where I grew up, and it's set in the time of the Witchfinder General Matthew Hopkins, whose self-appointed job was to basically, so a lot of the men were away for the English Civil War. And sorry, I've got to go and get the kids in a minute, so I'm just checking the time. And this Matthew Hopkins decides to come in and start accusing different women of witchcraft and locking them up in Colchester Castle. And so it's based on true events. It's the main character is a real character. Apparently you can actually see in Colchester Castle the room where the witches were imprisoned, which I really want to go and see. And it's an extremely dark book. It's so dark, like the living conditions, the poverty, the treatment of women, the complete abuse of religion, the the entrapment and punishment of women who've done nothing apart from be poor. It's very grim. It's so grim. Like, one of the book club members, she couldn't even finish it because it was so grim. And the language for me, so A.K. Blakemore was a poet. The language for me was a little bit, it got in the way of the story a little bit for me, because it wasn't an easy read in terms of actually reading the book as well as the plot. So I was a bit disappointed, but the author was absolutely lovely and very interesting to listen to. So that is my massive wrap up from the end of April and all of May. And if you've read any of these books, have any thoughts or questions about them, have any general things to say, then please do comment down below. And thank you for watching, especially if you made it this far. And I will speak to you all soon. Bye.